And welcome to the second part of Talking Europe, where I'm joined from Aberdeen, Scotland, by Christian Allard. He's a member of the Scottish Parliament from the Scottish National Party. That's the party that won a landslide in Scotland on Thursday night. Mr. Allard, thank you very much for being with us. Now, Allard doesn't sound very Scottish. There's a reason for that. You were born in France, in the city of Dijon. You first came to Scotland 25 years ago. Visibly, you like the place. I will agree with you. Scotland is a very beautiful place indeed. You decided to stay, but tell me, how did you end up as a member of the Scottish Parliament for the separatist SNP?
Or more by accident than anything else, as my life took me to politics more by accident after my children were grown up, and I decided to get involved, and here I am now, member of the Scottish Parliament.
And you're the member from a party, the SNP, that advocates independence from the United Kingdom. Why did you choose the SNP? What kind of values do you like about this particular party?
I think the SNP responded a lot of my concern about how the United Kingdom need to be modernized and need to be reformed, and I think it was the only party which really showed an alternative, not only an alternative, an economic alternative, but as well a constitutional alternative, and really a modern party for a modern democracy, which is Scotland today.
Now, as I said, your party won a landslide victory in Scotland. Your party took 56 out of 59 seats. That's in Scotland. Let's watch our report.
Scottish National Party.
They are the other winners of the UK elections. The Scottish National Party has won 56 of the 59 Scottish seats in the 650-member House of Commons. That's 9 times more than their current 6 seats. Heading up this political success story is party leader Nicola Sturgeon. The 44-year-old took the reins of the pro-independence party after the SNP lost September's referendum on independence. She campaigned hard that the general election wasn't about independence, but about Scotland's voice being heard in London.
I said to people in Scotland that if they voted for us in this election, I wouldn't take that as an endorsement of independence. I'm not going to go back on that. Labour were unable to defeat the Conservatives in England. I think that makes it all the more important that we do have a strong team of SNP MPs to fight Scotland's corner and to stand up for Scotland, and that's what we plan to do.
And now the third biggest party in Parliament, the SNP, is getting the respect they want.
Can you all hear me?
Their political ascension Thursday hurt Labour, as it lost long-held seats to the more ideologically left SNP. A result that's being called the Scottish lion that roared. David Cameron said he'd stick to his word and give more autonomy to Scotland to ensure a unified future for the UK.
I want to bring our country together, our United Kingdom together, not least by implementing as fast as we can the devolution that we rightly promised and came together with other parties to agree, both for Wales and for Scotland.
With a now deepened political divide between Edinburgh and London, momentum for a second referendum on independence could become stronger than ever.
Christian Allard, we just heard in the report Nicola Sturgeon, the leader of the SNP, a very charismatic politician who's caught the imagination of many Scottish voters. Well, visibly, David Cameron understands the mood in Scotland. He said on Friday that he would move ahead as fast as possible with a plan to give more powers to Scotland. He said that he will create the strongest devolved government anywhere in the world, with important powers over taxation. You must be thrilled to hear that.
Oh, we all heard it before, unfortunately. We heard it for month and month last year, and very little has happened since. So it's very, very important that any promises now will have to be challenged by a group of 56 very strong SNP MPs down at Westminster. A very strong group which will make sure that all the promises are fulfilled.
And very specifically, what do you expect from this new Tory-led government?
we'll see. I think the Prime Minister will have to decide which direction he wants to take. He'll have to decide if he wants to do the same thing that he did in this last term, which is mean a lot more austerity and not a lot of respect for his partners in Europe and for his partners in the United Kingdom. And now, if he wants to change, if he wants to understand that there is a different way, there is a way that the 56 MPs, SNP MPs coming down from Scotland will show him the way, and we'll hope that we'll be able to make a difference and maybe to take the United Kingdom in a different direction that it's been taking the last few years.
Now, Scotland was traditionally a Labour stronghold. There's always been a great deal of animosity towards the Conservatives, towards the Tories. Isn't it, though, a bit ironic that by winning all these seats and taking them from Labour, you've helped bring Mr Cameron back to 10 Downing Street?
Oh, it's absolutely nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. Why? Because if all their seats had been Labour, we'll be exactly in the same situation. We made it very, very clear that the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon, our First Minister and the leader of the SNP, was very, very clear and saying that we will make sure that we will not work with the Tories and there will be no Conservative government because of SNP MPs. It's looked like that our end of the bargain has been fulfilled. We've got 56 MPs in Scotland. The problem is Ed Miliband not won England, and he's got only himself to blame for this. We've done our end of the bargain. He has not done his end of the bargain.
Well, let's talk about the Scottish economy now. In Scotland, plunging global oil prices have aggravated a production crisis, with energy companies laying off workers over the past year. In Aberdeen, the UK's oil hub, the whole city has felt the shocks. Hervé Amoric and Lucy Fielder report.
Over the last year, the downturn in the oil industry has dealt a blow to Scotland's economy, particularly here on Aberdeen's harbour. These ships run supplies to oil rigs in the North Sea. Contractors have seen a sharp drop in business.
There's fewer vessels working at Aberdeen now, or if there are vessels here, they don't have jobs to go on, so that has affected us.
This shipping company remains busy supplying the Scottish Islands, but its energy clients are cutting costs. The oil and gas industry has laid off 4,000 employees within the last year.
It's very nervous. People are getting laid off and paid off every week in different companies.
The sector is the UK's largest industrial investor, employing almost 500,000 people.
This basin has some challenges, both in terms of rising cost and now decreasing production, on top of which we've got a crisis globally with the oil price.
For the best part of 3 decades, Frank Doran has represented energy workers as a union official and Member of Parliament. He's retiring at a challenging time for Scottish Oil.
The trade unions are having a problem at the moment because the management want to change things there. Instead of a 2 week on, 3 weeks off cycle, for example, the employers now want, for no extra money, to change that into a 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off.
What oil and gas companies want from the next UK government is fiscal encouragement to keep drilling and exploring off Scotland's shores.
What's the mood like in Scotland? Your party is extremely popular. You won half of the popular vote. And as I said, 56 out of the 59 seats that Scotland has in Westminster. We know that you held a referendum back in the autumn. David Cameron says that the issue has been put to rest for at least a generation. But looking at the success of the SNP, it doesn't look like it's really the case.
Oh, we've been very clear during all the campaign, and we're very clear after this election. You know, any referendum in Scotland will be decided by the people of Scotland. It will not be decided by politicians, either in London or either in Edinburgh.
No, I'd like to talk about another referendum, the referendum on Britain's EU membership. As you heard on Friday, David Cameron confirmed that his government will hold a referendum, will ask the British people to have a say in the current relationship between Britain and Brussels. First of all, do you welcome this in-out referendum?
The referendum of Mr. Cameron is a very different referendum. It's got to be very clear. We don't know what the proposition is going to be because he has not negotiated yet with his partners. So before we know what it's all about, it's very difficult for us to say anything. The only thing we can say, and we made it very, very clear during the campaign, that it's out of the question that Scotland will be taken out of Europe without Scotland deciding for it. So if there is a referendum across the islands and Scotland decide to stay in Europe, Mr. Cameron will have to respect the will of the Scottish people.
So your message is, if Britain were to leave Europe, we Scots want to stay in Europe and therefore we wouldn't remain part of the United Kingdom?
It's up to Mr. Cameron to decide. But as we know, we don't know what the proposition is, and we don't know yet what our partners in Europe is going to think about what Mr. Cameron wants.
Is it a dangerous gamble? Is David Cameron playing with fire by possibly leading his country into what some have called Brexit?
Yeah, it's very difficult to understand why Mr. Cameron wants to have this, if it's not to try to gain more vote south of the border. It looks like that the principal problem he seems to have is European immigration, as he calls it. This is not European immigration, which was a fundamental part of the EU, which is free movement of people. So I think we have a problem of interpretation, how to understand how it is to be European. The free movement of people is one of the fundamental rights of the people living in Europe. And I'll have to see, we will have to see what the propositions are and when the negotiations take place, what is going to happen in the next few months. But it'll be interesting.
Now, as you know, Nigel Farage failed to win his seat in South Thanet. Nigel Farage is, of course, was at least until Friday, the leader of the anti-immigration, anti-Europe UKIP party. The fact that Mr. Farage lost his seat and that his party only got one seat across the country, does it actually weaken UKIP from your perspective, as seen from Scotland?
I think UKIP was always made it bigger than it was, but it really was. At the end of the day, we knew he will take only 1 or 2 seats. When you compare it with the 56 seats that we have now at Westminster from Scotland, from the Scottish National Party, and we are now the third party in the UK, you'll see that it's an absolutely different power that we have now in this Parliament. And I think we'll see a different view, and I hope that the rest of the Parliament will understand and will take notice that the people of Scotland want really to have take the United Kingdom in a different direction, which is absolutely not the direction of Mr. Farage.
And which I guess is not also the direction of David Cameron, because you are essentially an anti-austerity party. That's how you describe yourself. David Cameron is in favour of fiscal discipline. So in the next 5 years, we're likely to see more fiscal discipline, more austerity. This is not at all what your party had hoped to see.
We know everything to know about fiscal discipline. Let's not forget that we are working in a devolution here in Scotland, and we've got a fixed budget, which have been, our party, the SNP, was a minority government from 2007 to 2011, and then from 2011 from now, we are a majority government, and we have to have a fixed budget, and we have to work on our fixed budget. So, to be fiscally prudent is not a problem for us. What's a problem is to have a level of austerity that which will stop the growth of our economy, and that is really one of the worries that a lot of businesses have here in Scotland. And I can understand that. And regarding employment, we'll have to be very, very careful what kind of employment we are having in the UK, and what will be the future if we have a lot more austerity as it was planned by Mr. Cameron.
Christian Allard, thank you very much for talking to us. I remind our viewers that you're a member of the Scottish Parliament from the SNP, the Scottish National Party, the pro-independence party that won a landslide in Scotland, and you were born in France, in Dijon. Thank you for watching this edition of Talking Europe. Please stay with us on France 24 for more news. Goodbye.